Hey everybody, welcome to Record Writes. Today we are going to cover one way to create your ebook by yourself. Now, this is not the way that I have done it for the past like 15 years or so, but I recorded the way that I do it. The video ended up being an hour and 20 minutes, and I was just afraid that it was going to scare people away. So before I even released that, I decided that I am recording this video about how to make an ebook with Scrivener. It's a lot less intimidating. I don't know if it's that much more simple, but it does have a GUI, a graphic user interface, that you can use instead of dealing directly with the code. And at first I was skeptical, but I opened up the EPUB that it produced and it makes a nice EPUB. Is this the optimum way to make an ebook today? I think it might be. If Amazon still used Mobi files instead of EPUBs, I still believe that the by hand method would be the best. And the by hand method does give you a lot of fine-grained control about some things, but then you lose that control when you have to convert it to an EPUB using something like Calibre, which inserts styling. And the main thing that you don't want is to force a bunch of styling onto your reader. Their e-reader app, their e-reader device allows them to put in the defaults that they want, and you need to make something as simple as possible so that it respects those results. Now, when I opened up this EPUB, you can turn an EPUB into a zip file and examine the files and look at the styling. At first, I saw a lot of styling, and I said, nope, this is not the way to do it. I recorded my version of the way that I do it, and which I will probably continue to do because I have a lot of books that are already in HTML. They are not broken up like this. I did happen to write a book and a couple of novella, but I've received them back from a publisher because I'm republishing them, so this doesn't contain the changes that I need to capture. So I will continue to use my old method, but I don't know. I might become a convert. I don't know that I'm going to write in Scrivener, but it's easy enough to copy it over chapter by chapter if you want to. And it is a nice environment if you want to write it scene by scene and have a structure that can kind of reduce your stress when you're planning your book. I'm not selling you Scrivener, but I am saying that this is a nice alternative. I came back, I opened up the EPUB again and looked closer, and I saw that the styles that were over the top for me were ones that were going to be used in like nonfiction and things like that. The actual styles that were applied to the paragraphs to this piece of fiction work were extremely minimal, more minimal than what I got from making it by hand and then converting it to EPUB, unfortunately. So I'm showing you this as an alternative. The first thing to talk about with anything like this, in my mind, is price. Everyone seems to try to milk writers for all the money that they can. We care about what we do, and that makes us vulnerable to the predators. So how much does Scrivener cost? Here I am on literatureandlatte.com. You can just search for Scrivener and you'll find this. And as you can see, it's a one-time purchase of $60. That's a really good value. So I am using Scrivener 3, and there is a way that they allow you to upgrade if you have earlier versions for basically half off. That's really nice, and these versions do not come out often. This program's been around for a long time, and they are only on version 3. So in my mind, this is a much safer purchase than the ones that want you to pay something monthly. They seem to never add up to less than $120 a year. This is $60 and it should last you years. And when you do eventually need to upgrade, it seems like their practice is to do it at half price. They've got it for Mac. They've got it for Windows. The new version usually comes out for Mac first. Originally, I believe this was Mac only. They've got it for iOS and they have bundles that they sell. Okay, So that's enough of a sales pitch for a company that I don't have any affiliate links to. Let's look at how you actually make your ebook with Scrivener. I haven't gone into this extensively, so I'm more showing you that as possible. Unlike my unlike the version of this video where I make it by hand, I'm not showing you step by step on this. When I make it by hand, if you watch that video, you will see every single step required. This is going to take a little bit of investigation on and trial and error on your part, but it's a nice program, so I don't think it's going to be too hard. One thing that I wanted to show you though is that it's got this nice cork board view. So if you click on a folder that contains the scenes, you make the scenes individually. And then when it's time to, so you see, you only have access, it's a very long scene. You only have access to one scene at a time. And so if you are an outliner, you can sit here and you can like do kind of a virtual corkboard where you make these little virtual note cards. You can type out a synopsis into each of them, and then when it comes time, you go through each one. You've got your synopsis over here on the side saying what the scene's going to be about, and you type it all up. It is a nice writing experience. I've got a book here. How do I turn it into an ebook? Go to File, and you go to Compile. So this is how you turn it into anything. Typically, when I see export things like this, it makes me nervous. I think about people in the old days taking their literal Microsoft Word document and running it through Calibre and just ending up with an absolute mess with fonts of different sizes, with margins of like overwhelming the page. This doesn't do that. So what you would do is you would set it to an ebook, and then you would compile it into the ebook that you want. We want an EPUB. Mobi is deprecated, so we want an EPUB because that is now what Amazon and everyone else takes. They finally gave up on having their own proprietary format. And then you see which files, you click which files you want to include. You'll notice I wrote 3 openings for this. And so I have one that I went with, and it's the one that's selected. Then you'll have this is broken up by scenes. The problem, it's not a problem, but so it is something that you are going to have to look into. So right now, these are each selected. There are different section types. And these are set as a section that creates a page break. Now, if you were to break it up, have each one of these individual files contain only one chapter, then that would work just fine. But that's not the case here. So you have your heading that you get from this. This is set as a heading. And then each of these is a section which behaves like a chapter instead of having just a small break in the page. It starts you on the next page. That's the part you have to look into. I don't know how to do that. I can't imagine it's that difficult, but I don't feel like looking it up. So then we hit compile, and you can see that I've already done one. So you just type in the file name, you hit save, and it takes a moment, but it works through and it saves it as this. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at that so that I can show you what I am talking about when I talk about the metadata, when I talk about the styling. This is something that I go over in much more depth in the next video that's coming out, which is already edited, and which when I watched it, I realized it's going to scare a lot of people away. But I still think it's worth a watch after this has let you know that everything is right with the world and you still can create an EPUB. And check out that video for more in-depth look at what all these different files do. Because within this EPUB are different files. So let's take a look at that. All right, so what you see here is the EPUB file that I generated from Scrivener by hitting compile. The thing about an EPUB file, which is different from a Mobi file, is that it is not a compiled file. It is a secret zip. That means that we can go into it and we can poke around. So, and actually, if you want to, you can go in and you can change the metadata and improve it. I believe that you can, there's a way to set all the metadata that you need probably within Scrivener, but you can manually go in and change it here if you want to. And I do show you how to do that in the next video. So let's change this to a zip. If we want to be able to open the files within in the programs that I need to be able to examine it, something other than the default programs, in order to have the right-click menu access to that, you need to extract it to a folder. Hopefully you've seen this before, and I'm not teaching you anything on this, but if so, a zip file is a way to compile everything into multiple files into one file, and also add some compression if you need to. It doesn't always have compression, but it does allow everything to be contained in one file instead of a group of files, which makes it handy for porting around, which is essentially what this EPUB is doing. So let's go in and look what we've got. It took every one of these scenes and it made it into its own separate HTML file. We can open one of these up, and if you just click on this, it's going to open it up because it's an HTML file. It will open it up in Edge. So let's take a look at it in Notepad. So you can see, like I said, this is literally an HTML file. It is basically just a very simple website. And it has, P stands for paragraph. So each one of these is separated out into a paragraph. You can see it's got P class PS4. So let's go ahead and look at the style sheet and see exactly what that entails. So we go into CSS inside of this OPS. I have no idea what OPS stands for. It seems to contain all the HTML and the styling. Then you have to right click this to open it up in Notepad++. I suggest Notepad++. A lot of programmers have different things that they like. These are kind of programmer tools. And so you see, when I saw this, I said, oh, that's way too much styling. This is the style sheet, which applies the styles to format all the text. But the majority of these are not used. You are not going to be using most of these things because, as you saw, everything is just a paragraph. So when we see what's applied to the paragraph, we see that it gives it a margin of none and a text indent of none by default. That's all the formatting that's on it. That is very little. And then if you recall, the class of all of these is a PS4. And a PS4 sets an index, or sets an indent size, which is basically 3 letters. That's it. This is great. And this is why I think that it's a very viable alternative to doing this by hand. And a lot less terrifying for people. It's certainly far superior to taking something from Microsoft Word and just converting it to an EPUB. Okay, so let's take a look at one last thing, and that is the metadata. The EPUB file is, as you saw, a zip file that is just a container for a very simple website, essentially, and metadata. So let's take a look at that metadata. And it's not in there. Okay, so I didn't need to leave that at all. Oh, it also has a table of contents. Take a quick look at it, but this isn't something that you're going to need to mess with. It has a nav point, so this is XML, and it has a nav point for each one of those scenes, which it's treating as a chapter. Now, if I was to compile all those scenes and break them apart in my way, which is to just use 3 asterisks on its own line, centered, then it would not do this. It would only do this for the chapters. So you see it sets a navigation point, which an e-reader knows how to click through when you use whatever method it is to click through the chapters instead of through the pages. That's what your table of contents file does. It's a TOC and CX. So that is very straightforward. There's really nothing that, not much. I shouldn't say there's nothing that it can do wrong, because there is plenty that it can do wrong if it's not intended to work like this. But Scrivener is intended to make ebooks, so it does it correctly. So let's take a look instead at the metadata, which is contained within this OPF file. We will edit it with Notepad++. You see that it's got a manifest of all of the individual files that make up the ebook. And then it has a little bit of metadata up here. It's got the title, it's got the author, it's got the date and the language. What it does not have is the subject, which is the BISAC genre. If you look up BISAC, you can find that every type of book fits into one of those genres. It's similar to what you would choose in Kindle KDP when you're uploading your book. So if I was going to add something, that would be what I would add, and then I could zip it back up and change the type to an EPUB. But my guess is that there is something within Scrivener that allows you to check the metadata. You're just going to have to look into that yourself. It's also not that big of a deal if it doesn't have it. You will be adding the genre when you, I don't think it adds it to the book. It might though, in Kindle when you select the genres that it fits into for the Kindle store. Okay, so let's say, and now this is a little advanced lesson. You don't have to do this unless you've changed something. Let's say that you changed something in here and you want to, in the metadata or in the styling, and you want to preserve those changes. You'll need to turn it back into a zip file. It's still thinking. It's got a lot of files in it, even though they're very, very small. Change it back into a zip file, and then change it into an EPUB file, or just change the name into an EPUB file. The file extension. So let's take a look at what we get. So you can see that it made a table of contents based off of the scene list and the titles that I gave those. And then it gives you the ebook. So you can see that it does a page break at every scene, which is not how I would want it, but you just need to either mark all of your scenes correctly in the conversion process, or you need to write them all within one chapter and have each individual file be a chapter. The EPUB that I did not just create looks exactly the same. That was just to show you that you can mess with what's inside of there, and doing the correct things, it won't mess up the book. It still operates as an ebook. Created a zip file and changed the file type. So there we go. Okay, so that's it. That is how you make an EPUB file in Scrivener, which is, in my opinion, a very affordable program which has a ton of benefits. If I wrote at my computer, I may very well be writing in this, and even when I write elsewhere, maybe I'll start writing on an AlphaSmart and feeding it over to this. I really enjoy that process on my AlphaSmart Neo. The video where you make the ebook by hand is still coming. I do think that it is probably still a valuable watch, even if you decide that this is the route that you want to take. But now you've got options. And when you watch that, you will know that this is something that you can do instead. So that's it for this video. I hope that this was helpful. I hope it shows you that you can make a very high quality ebook yourself without spending a lot of money, and that you will continue on this self-publishing journey with me through the rest of the videos. The next one is going to be how to do this by hand, and then after that we're going to look at how to upload, and then after that we're going to start in on making the paper book for CreateSpace. So if that sounds good, just, I guess, click subscribe if somehow you got here otherwise. Once again, I'm Jalen Riker, and I'm wishing you a great rest of your day.